Thank the Force. It's Thursday nights, once again, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Welcome in Star Wars Newsnet Live. What's up, boys? Nate's
Woo!
first time here in months, I
A
think it
while.
is. It's been months because we've been on the usual me, Luke, and Jay, or me, Luke, and Miguel grind for a while. So good to see you there, Nate.
Yep.
Luke, you're looking as dashing as ever.
Thank you so much.
I've graduated from lurker status to finally get back on the big stage.
Finally.
It's so wonderful to have you back here, Nate. I have to say that whatever I say should not be held against me this evening. I spent 12 hours at middle school today with the children and their parents as well, because we had open house night today, which is always fun. You get to meet some of the families of your kids, even if it means that you're at the school for a really long day. But it's a good time. I enjoy it. But when I got home, what was waiting for me was my Patriots putting on, the offensive clinic that I was expecting, which was a lack thereof of an offensive clinic. So it's pretty abysmal. So yes, Mr. Clark, one of my students. Yes, we did. I did meet your parents this evening. Your dad
I love
got
how our
20.
chat is just always your students and no one
They
else.
so they got like we played like this game of Boggle for a little bit, and his dad got like 25 words in 2 minutes. And then I met Issa's mom this evening, and she was like super sweet too. And I actually had to show her. She was like, "Really? Like my Isabella? She is?" And I was like, "Why are you surprised? Like we shouldn't be surprised about that." So I like showed her an example of her writing. I was like, "No, look, like this is what she's doing in class. Like I promise." She's like, "Oh my goodness, my
Great job, Issa.
anyway." Yes, I'm glad that you were able to see that, Isabella. So talk about like a really weird Star Wars day today. And
Oh my
Nate,
God.
before we get going, behind you, is that like a regular Nubs or is that Darth Nubs? Do we have to be worried about anything behind you there?
I don't know, because the way he looks, if I give him the camera here, like the way his fur just kind of just sits on his face, he looks like he's very menacing.
Looks
And I've always
menacing.
been kind of scared of him. So I don't know. Maybe I have the one Darth Nubs. Maybe I should worry that he's gonna, turn. So I don't know. Maybe.
Is it appropriate for me to mention the Chinese zoo where they painted the dogs to look like pandas? And I was just reminded of that when you showed Nubs and his hair like that.
There's a horrific zoo in it. No, okay.
Escape from Mallow, yes.
Jesus.
So a couple of things before we get into our Star Wars what ifs this evening. Number one is, Nate, tell us about this random. There was like an audio drama. I have been like offline all day because I was at school for so long, so I didn't even realize until I got home at like 9 o'clock that, oh my goodness, a Star Wars book dropped today out of nowhere, not on the radar at all.
Yeah, so it was really funny. So I don't know if anyone in the chat has been following the news today. Here at Star Wars Newsnet, we also revealed that there was going to be a Bad Batch comic coming at the start of next year, which I can't wait for. So I wake up ready to post that, share online, all that good stuff, and then I go on Twitter, and I already see a bunch of chatter about this completely random audiobook that's out of nowhere. And I don't want to talk about people that were that I have connections with, but Disney Lucasfilm Press and Disney Books, they're notorious for being very silent on everything and then just suddenly just doing stuff like this. And so I don't know where this came from. But for those of you who are just hearing about it now, it's about like a 3-4 hour Obi-Wan and Anakin novella, short story. It's not a full-blown novel.
Is it going to be good? Like, is this trash? Like, is this going to be trash? Or is this going to be good?
I listened to
you know me, I love a good Star Wars book.
He's finished.
I've read through some trash novels. I have read through some trash novels.
So it's
I got
set
some of them on my
between
shelf
episodes 1 and 2, Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. I will say there are better Obi-Wan and Anakin stories set in this time frame. There is a 5-issue comic from Charles Soule, Shocker, a very good series.
A great one.
Oh,
I recommend that over this. There's also a one-shot comic that I haven't read in a while, but I remember liking that quite a bit. But it does just enough to justify its existence.
like its existence. That's like the lowest bar. It's like in class, if I give someone like a 7 out of 10, and I'm like, and I'm like really
like,
trying to give them a 7 out of 10. You know what I mean? Like I'm justifying you passing.
So it's free if you have an Audible membership. So you don't have to pay a dime for it.
You're really selling it. It's free. Like you're not hurting yourself at all.
They didn't put any marketing behind it, so of course it's not going to be earth-shattering. But if you want to,
that Trials of the Jedi, I saw we have like the June 17th.
June 17th. Yes. Let's go.
Yes,
that's good.
Yes, there's much better books and comic stuff going around. But I will say that if you just want a fun, harmless Obi-Wan and Anakin story, give it a shot. Anakin is Anakin's a really fun character in the book. He's just, I know we have a lot of Tyler students in here. He's a lot like you guys in this book. Very obnoxious, very all over the place.
Okay.
Whoa. You know. When have I ever said my students are obnoxious on here? And never, of course, never.
I have worked with enough children in my life to know that you people are nuts, and Anakin is like, I'm just kidding. Do not tattletale on me. You guys are all
awesome. So Luke, did you finish Rebuild the Galaxy? Because we talked, you only had 2 episodes.
I just did today. Just finished today.
Look at you getting your homework done right before the test.
Really did.
They appreciate that. What was your favorite part? Did you enjoy it?
Yes, did enjoy it. It was, again, I'm not going to be like, oh, it was the greatest thing ever. It was really fun. It was really fun to watch, to just kind of like have something that doesn't take itself too seriously. Mm-hmm. So, and I know you texted me about this, but I think one of my favorite parts was Maul Lando type of like crossover. Yes. So
I have to admit that part of the reason I was texting you my live reactions while watching was because I was so tired because I had like night class that day and I was just trying to stay awake for like to finish the episodes before. I was enjoying it, but I was really trying to stay awake. So I'm like,
that happened with me on episode 2. I fell asleep.
But you only watched the first 2, so I had to stop, and I'm literally like Mr. Bean with the like toothpicks in his eyes or whatever, trying to stay awake for the last 2, and I totally fell asleep, and then I had to like go back and watch like a little bit.
That's exactly what
I will say. Someday, when I have absolutely nothing going on in my life, I want to go back and rewatch them and just keep track of like all of the random like one-liners that mean something, you know, if you're super
That's the fun with Lego Star Wars. Going back to watch all of it, because every single Lego Star Wars thing pokes fun at so many things that you don't catch until you go back and watch again.
Right. And I really want to like go back and see that. I will say my favorite moment in all 4 episodes, outside of Billy D. Williams voicing like the Landalorian at the end, which was pretty funny, has to be, and this is maybe just low hanging fruit, has to be Darth Jar Jar Binks dancing and Misa spin the Phantom Menace, and then like they play Duel of the Fates like behind him, and then of course like he instantly gets like KO'd like nothing. Like that's like my favorite moments. It's because it was all of my love for Jar Jar. Like, I mean, he's always right here. Like I can always grab him. He always sits right next to where I am at because he's like,
sitting as well.
He is, because I have my shelf and he literally just sits on the shelf. He puts his arm up over the shelf and it's like he's hanging out. So he's just gonna hang out right there for a minute. And so I just had to really love that moment when we got Darth Jar Jar. But the fact that he like got KO'd so quickly also was really nice, because I get so tired of the Darth Jar Jar conspiracy theorists online. So it was like we finally had this moment and it could go away forever now.
We dealt with that. I really liked this party's just getting started. That was also like my other like favorite one. Just completely turned it on his head.
Like I have that backpack.
Yeah, I have a bone to pick with whoever agreed, and it's probably why Nubs back here is so upset. I want to know who okayed the yeeting of Darth Nubs. Who
He
in the
went.
world approved such abuse to such a lovable
launched.
guy?
He gets launched.
Yeah, he just was just like, what? Why? I audibly gasped when I saw that because I've just been sitting there enjoying it, like just the wanton violence out of nowhere.
The
Like,
wanton violence
come on, man.
of a beloved
What did Nubs do
character.
to you? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So we're gonna go. I want to go like. Do we want to go timeline order tonight, or do we want to jump like movies and then shows? What we have. So Luke, what series tonight? We're gonna do like our favorites or ultimate Star Wars what ifs in throughout the saga because of Rebuild the Galaxy. You kind of hit on a lot of that randomness that could happen. So I want to know, Luke, which series or standalone movies did you create what ifs for? Like, I know we talked about a plan. I have 2 for every trilogy.
And I've got at least 1 for all the shows minus like Book of Boba Fett. I
You
didn't
even
do
have
any of the.
you have a resistance one?
Yes.
You even put it. You
Yes.
did not. You did not. You did
My
not.
man.
I had
Star Wars Resistance.
Good to see you, Manslayer. We haven't talked in a while. I believe Manslayer actually, during the Star Wars shows, we will exchange like voice messages a lot on Twitter, just talking about like the different stuff. So I haven't heard from you in a while. It's good to see you back. I know your schedule's
Welcome
been a bit wonky lately. But I will say, like, I don't even know who this is, so we'll see. Name drop it in the chat if you are, here. So you have all the shows. So do you have an Acolyte one?
I have at least 1.
All right, let's do
there.
one. Do you want to start
Okay,
with
so
movies?
I had.
Do we want to go timeline order or movies? I'll let you two decide. Like, do you want to do timeline or do you want to do movies then shows?
It'd probably be more efficient to go down the timeline route.
I was
think.
thinking that too, kind of
That's
break
fine.
it up so that you're not going all at once. I'm not going all at once. Like kind of just back and
Okay.
forth. So I had
Okay, that works.
I think I had a real one for Acolyte and then I had a snarky one. So
Okay, let's go real. Let's go real one for Acolyte,
one,
and then we get
for
our
sure.
snarky ones at the end. Like,
and we
can
don't
go
even
full
have to.
snarky.
Yeah, I was gonna say we don't have to like discuss it. It was just funny to type down.
Okay.
But it was
first Acolyte. What if? What is it?
And I put, what if Soul had saved both twins? What if he was able to stop May from
Of
falling?
course.
Is this going
So-
to change
That's the
May's
big
whole
question.
trajectory?
Yeah.
So
So this one's interesting, and I don't know how much. And I'm gonna be honest, Luke. I don't know how much I like this what if scenario. You know why? Because like this, I feel like it changes the fabric of the dynamics so much that like it's hard for me to like imagine what that future would be. But I will say this: I think that saving them both would be presenting an interesting choice for May. Like, what does she do? Because Osha very clearly wants to join the Jedi, but May would, I would assume, tell Osha that she just saw Soul kill their mother. So, like, what does May do? Does she like go all in on getting Osha to lead the Jedi, or Osha in shock doesn't believe her and still joins the Jedi? Like, I don't know, like what like the difference is there, but like the Jedi would have this like custody over May and be in charge of where she goes next. So it might change the fabric of like the training of May and like what Chimera is going to do later on. But I don't know how much it would necessarily change the dark side like presence of the universe. A lot of this is hard because we don't have a season 2 that to build on to know what these relationships are going to do like even more. But overall, I would say that obviously plays a big role because Soul ends up getting killed by Osha, and Osha's not going to have the power to just kill him right there immediately, probably. Nate, what about you?
Yeah, I think I echo a lot of your same sentiments. I don't know if both were saved, I think, yeah, that would be the question of what would their training look like. And I honestly don't, I can honestly see a lot of the same stuff playing out, just slight variations. Um, Eventually, more than like, Osha would still probably leave the Jedi Order for one reason or another. May probably won't hang around. Chimere would still probably find them, and so on and so forth. So I don't really know how much it would change beyond just little things here and there. Obviously, season one, as we know it, wouldn't happen. It would change the entire thing, and it probably would have made a better show if I'm being totally honest. That's not a discussion altogether.
Yeah,
But
we could talk for days on
yeah,
Acolyte decisions.
that's one of the big
for sure.
questions that a lot of people have about the show is what if? I mean, yeah,
it's so many what ifs.
he
That's like
easily
you could do the
have.
what if
He
you could do the
easily
what if
could
show
have,
on the
but
Acolyte.
I could still easily see a lot of the same general things happen.
So, Manslayer, in terms of like commenting about the possibility of Lucasfilm testing like concepts in the Lego world, we didn't really talk about that just because I think they have so firmly entrenched themselves, and this is just going to be a fun place to make fun of projects while exploring things they're not able to explore in other mediums and just having fun. Like I think that's purely what it's for. I don't believe they would ever drop this in a Lego show. Some people really like it, and then suddenly we're seeing Rey doing force portal time travel and anything outside of what the World Between Worlds is. You guys feel differently, or?
I will add that I remember a similar conversation coming up during. Do you guys remember the Freemaker adventures?
Nope.
I know about those. I didn't really watch them.
I can't remember who from Lucasfilm said it, but he confirmed Lego stuff not canon. Don't take it seriously. It's just them having fun, wanting to tell a different type of story that's poking fun at things. But he also added that they still try to ground it in some sort of like Star Wars reality. In that, so a lot of people like Pablo Hidalgo and whatnot have talked about how they view differences in canon and whatnot, how it all depends on who's telling the story. And they described the Lego stuff as someone's telling the same story, but they're just smashing their Legos together. Nothing makes sense, and they're just having a ball. And that's basically what Lego Star Wars is. So while it's not canon, and yeah, it's definitely interesting, some of the stuff they do with the sequel trilogy, including the stuff in the Christmas special with time travel and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know if they would ever go any further than that. But it's definitely something that you gotta take at face value, but at the same time, it's fun to think about. I mean, it's interesting, this idea of just rebooting the galaxy with just a single, that there's something in Star Wars that could do that.
Okay, so I have my Phantom Menace. I have 2 for Phantom Menace. Well, not 2 for Phantom Menace. 2 for the prequels here. First one is Phantom Menace. The second one is Attack of the Clones. And this first one's Phantom Menace, like at the beginning, but it bleeds into Revenge of the Sith. It's like a full prequel culmination. I have mentioned this on this show before, and it's what if Darth Maul survives the first episode in terms of the movies, and Anakin is the one, he stays Palpatine's apprentice, and Anakin kills Maul in the third one. Like, what would that do in terms of like maybe enhance our story, enhance the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan? In this scenario, Anakin somehow makes it back from his little, space travel time to blow up the Trade Federation place, and somehow he is going to witness Qui-Gon's death. He's going to witness Obi-Wan falling short of saving Qui-Gon, and he's going to see it with his own eyes instead of just hearing about it later. So we're going to have Anakin having the trauma of seeing his father figure die, and his now master is like, he views as the one like maybe a little bit weak or not able to do what needs to be done. And then Anakin's going to see Darth Maul right there, see the one who kills Qui-Gon, and ultimately get his revenge in the third one, and then take his place as Palpatine's apprentice. I think this could make for a more interesting dynamic. How would that change like anything? Because the end result is still the same, Anakin turning to the dark side, but some of the relational dynamics between him and Obi-Wan could definitely change. And certainly it changes a lot of things in terms of Count Dooku and what's going on possibly in the Clone Wars and Maul's role in that. I'm curious what you guys think of this one. Luke, you have some initial thoughts?
Sure. That's a pretty good one. And it is interesting because the end result does not change. Anakin is still falling dark side. So um, I think I'm gonna say that this makes me think maybe Anakin and Obi-Wan. There's just he's kind of hot-headed. He might even like request not to be Obi-Wan's Padawan. There's maybe like bad blood that like boils, and I think maybe they don't hate each other, but like they're not as close because of this. Because not that Anakin's really gonna blame him, be mad at him, but I think it just is like a this is completely fizzled out. I need to be a Jedi on my own terms. I maybe need to find another master. I think maybe Obi-Wan isn't in his life hardly at all. So I think his turn to the dark side might even be easier and maybe it happens sooner.
Okay.
Maybe I'm thinking Anakin is jealous that Maul is Palpatine's right hand man and like maybe wants to take that spot from a dark side perspective. He's already kind of like deciding to turn before he even kills Maul. That's why he kills Maul. And I think maybe that's kind of the different road that we take. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
So, Nate, I want to throw the same question to you, but Clone Wars perspective. What would Maul's role be in the Clone Wars if he is still Palpatine's main apprentice, but people know he's out there, like he can't hide in the shadows anymore either? And like, how does this change Count Dooku as well?
That's honestly what I was thinking about the whole time Luke was going on. Because that would be kind of where my brain would go to, because the whole idea behind the Clone Wars on a galactic level is Count Dooku, we know he's the surrogate for Palpatine, but the galaxy doesn't know that. The galaxy sees Count Dooku as leader of the Separatists who aren't happy with how the Republic has been doing things. And
political idealist.
Yeah. And
Not a murderer.
and as we've seen throughout the Clone Wars and other media and whatnot, there's some truth in what the Separatists are saying from a certain point of view and why they feel the way they do. So that'd be interesting to see how Dooku would play into it. I would still think I can honestly see Dooku still being like the fringe Sith. He could be the Asajj Ventress to the whole scenario, where Palpatine is still playing puppet between both Dooku and Maul and trying to pit them against each other. I think that'd probably be the way things would operate. But obviously Maul would probably still have to be more at the forefront, and Dooku couldn't really show off a whole lot of his dark side tendencies. And then suddenly, and then we get a revamp of the Clone Wars show, and then we get like a season 4 reveal that Count Dooku is a Sith. And that could be really fun. And then the whole rest of the show, kind of like how Maul came back in the Clone Wars, suddenly now they're trying to take down Dooku and all that. So that could be interesting. But yeah, that's kind of where my brain would go. At the same time, I don't know if a whole lot would change. It would just be how the face of the Separatist movement operates with Palpatine's designs. And that's interesting.
That makes sense. I'm curious too, like what the trickle down, like the trickle down effect is as well, because like where does Asajj Ventress like play into this? Like where does
Asajj Ventress play into it?
Does Asajj end up Savage Opress? Where does Savage Opress? Like, does he no longer needed?
Yeah, it's a big old butterfly effect of things that all these things that the Clone Wars did. What does it look like? I mean, that's very interesting to think about what the Clone Wars would look like if Dooku isn't the face of the separatists as we know it. If it's Maul, I mean,
Mhm.
I can't see Maul making political speeches. So,
But he
We've
does
seen him give a
run
rousing
Crimson
speech.
Dawn, so I mean, he knows how to
but does he?
organize
But does he?
until his
That was all Dryden
death.
Voss,
Also,
though.
yeah, he's kind of the front-facing person, and I think Maul is the one in the running, pulling the strings.
So I
It's
mean,
kind of what
Dooku
I
could still
thought.
very easily be the leader of the separatists, but he's still very much trying to supplant Maul, and then Palpatine is still trying to sink his teeth into Anakin and so on and so forth. So that could be interesting.
So here's the next one.
We didn't even
Attack of
touch
the
on
Clones.
Grievous.
I think Grievous is actually the one that's secure because he's
I think
not
Grievous is fine.
just there.
I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know what about his story would change. I think he's fine.
So here's my next one. What if Anakin had got there in time to save his mother? His mother lives. She stays alive. He would then be bringing her back. She may stay on Tatooine. But I think that's a really interesting conversation piece that takes place there. I would imagine if he knows she's free, he's going to want to get her to come with him whenever they leave. Like he's like, I'm going to go back for my mother and I'm going to bring her with me or and get her out of this planet. But him not having the what is it? I guess the murder spree of the Tuskens there. There's that part of Anakin that's ready to boil and bubble over anyway, but his mother being alive specifically, being able to have conversations with her, maybe being able to unpack a lot of what's going on inside. Is there any chance that that one moment alone stops Darth Vader from ever being created and brought to life in a sense? Or would Anakin have still ended up on that path, but it just, obviously looks a little bit different at this point?
I'm gonna say that I think that is a huge milestone for him going dark, is that he feels helpless that he can't save his mother from the light side. Um, and he's seeing this kind of repeat with Padme, and so that's a big push, really maybe the biggest push to go dark side, because he's being told that's the answer. I think if he is able to get there a day, a week, a month sooner and save Shmi, I think that does a lot for him, because now he also is Anakin Skywalker. I think it's going to go to his head that like he thinks he can save people now. Like I think he's going to believe in himself more, which is a good thing. I think he's going to believe in the light side more. I think it's going to be a lot harder to turn him to the dark side. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I think it's going to be way harder to do that. And just for the sake of like the show, like sure, I'll say that like I think if he can save Shmi, yes, I am landing on the fact that he does not turn to the dark side. I think that does change his trajectory. And through all the Clone Wars, he's a better, happier, more optimistic person because he knows he did something good. He is capable of saving life. Like I think it truly does save him
That
from going
changes.
down the dark
That
side.
would change everything.
Yeah.
Nate, what do you think?
I tend to agree that it would save him, but I also agree with Manslayer here that I'm assuming you're talking about Palpatine. Palpatine would try to do something to Shmi at that point, and that's kind of scary to think about at the same time. I'll just say this: I hate Attack of the Clones with a burning passion, but every time I watch that scene, I go in just hoping and praying the movie plays out differently this time, and he actually does manage to save his mom, because that's the one scene in the movie that always gets me every time. It's wonderful,
right?
But yeah, I do think that one act alone would give him the confidence, because the whole reasons he started having those dreams about Padme and whatnot are one of the reasons is because of he just has zero confidence, and he's just fearful
with the
that the cycle's going to report. So
that
if
insecurity
he's
is
able
just
to have that
much.
confidence, like that's the big thing. It's like he wants to save everyone and everything, and if he can just do it one time, yeah. But then I'm just terrified about what Palpatine would do, or
Exactly.
if
That's the point I was wanting to drive home.
Maul could easily go, and or maybe that, or what if he saves Shmi, and then tying into the other what if Maul goes to kill Shmi, and then that leads Anakin to I need to get this guy because he killed my mom, and then that could definitely lead into some.
And that's
things.
a different path to the dark side, because I mean he still saved her, but now he's kind of just angry at Maul, and maybe
right.
Yep, I do think that it would.
Revenge of the Sith takes on a whole new meaning at that point.
Yeah.
Just because it's Anakin's revenge as well, and he's now a Sith. I will say that I kind of fall in the line of like what Manslayer was saying there, which is about how Palpatine had Anakin, he had it in his sights. He was going to do something at some point to really stoke the fires within Anakin and the turmoil. Like I think Anakin would have turned regardless, just because Palpatine was there pulling these strings, and no one in the Jedi were so far from where they needed to be at that point that I don't think they would have had the wherewithal and the wisdom to step in and try to help Anakin out, even though I think him saving Shmi would have made it would have been like a really good like band-aid or like a temporary cure to the other things going on there. But just because that happened, I don't know if the proper healing would take place over time.
Something else would have happened to escalate things again.
So
I think
Clone Wars would be somewhere in the middle of all of this. So Luke, give me a what if scenario from my favorite Star Wars TV show.
So funny enough, we were talking before the show about, WAG 2, the Lerman, and so we don't have to go super long on it because I think there's another interesting one that I want to go deeper on. But I did have what if Anakin had died on Meriden? Like the Lerman had not been able to save.
Stop right now!
I had
Shut
that down.
up! You got to be kidding me! I said that before the show. I was just joking around. I'm like, yes, that's one of my favorite episodes. I mean, Clone Wars of all time.
He's minutes from death in that episode. He's very close to dying in this episode. So what if he had died? What does Palpatine's plan look like to reconstruct that?
Hold on.
It's almost foiled at that point.
Hold on. So if Anakin had been born on Coruscant instead of Tatooine, would he have been a TikToker or something? Anakin would have been
social media
TikToker.
Like in Star Wars.
His social media would be
so
what if social media existed in Star Wars?
The Survivor season premiere was yesterday, and this guy named Andy that's on Survivor this season had one of the great meltdowns in the history of Survivor. The paranoia was getting to him so bad. At the end of this challenge, he's just sitting there and he's like, I've been fighting for my life, Jeff. These people, they don't like me. They don't like me at all. And John over there, he chopped a coconut and they cheered for him. And when I chopped it, no one said anything. And John's my best friend out here, but I'm going to throw him under the bus because and he's just has this in front of every single person. And I'm just thinking to myself, now I'm that's Anakin if he was on social media. No one in the Jedi liked me. Everyone is mad. He's posting this TikTok where he's raging. He's just sitting there and it's just this little music in the background. He's like, do you ever feel sometimes no one really respects what you have to say? That's exactly how this would go.
A 50 tweet thread.
50 tweet thread. Or there was this meme. I said all the things men do instead of go to therapy, and and it's just Anakin being on the poster child for that if he was born on Coruscant too. Absolutely. So Luke, outside of the Lerman not saving Anakin in Clone Wars, what is our fantastic Clone Wars what if?
I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on what if Fives had been successful in spreading the information about Order 66 before this was enacted.
Oh, whatever.
Did I get a good one here? I'm thinking Clone Rebellion before he can enact it. That's what I'm thinking.
There's just so much emotion in that Clone Wars arc that if you are a Star Wars
Fox,
fan,
I'm coming for you.
Of any kind, I don't know how if you love Star Wars. I don't know how you watch that arc, especially if you follow the clones in the series, and it just like Nate said before, where he said every time he watches Attack of the Clones, he is like, come on, do something. Every time I watch that arc, I am thinking to myself, do not leave him in the room alone with Palpatine. Like, do not do it, or don't shoot him. Like, please, just like listen to him. Like, oh, it just gut wrenching. If he doesn't do that, here's the problem, though. Maybe there's a clone rebellion, but what Palpatine might just go as just say nuke it, Order 66 immediately, and it gets a lot more messy because everything hasn't fallen into place. Anakin hasn't turned to him yet, but I don't think he's gonna go. Palpatine's not just gonna like let the Jedi rally and figure out this with the clones, and then no, he would probably just say massive collateral damage. He was already that's far enough into the show where the Jedi are starting to be looked at as sort of the bad guys. He could probably still figure out a way to like politically frame it as he's a victim in all of this and needed the clones to step in and do what they did. I think it just would have been really messy. We probably would have had a lot more Jedi survivors, and
That's
so
what
it
I
would
was
have
gonna
made
say.
it would have made the rebellion a lot more interesting in the early
Yes.
stages with more Jedi possibly like banding together to lead that front. Nate, what do you think?
Yeah. At the end of the day, Palpatine has contingencies upon contingencies upon contingencies upon backup plans upon backup plans. He has backup plans for those backup plans, and he has backup plans for those backup plans for those other backup plans. So Palpatine would know exactly how to get out of the mess that would be created if that information were to get out.
Right.
But it goes back to the thing that's always bugged me about the whole thing about the Clone Wars is the Jedi should know right away that the clones are tied to something sinister because of how they came to be with Psycho Diaz and they're tied to Jango Fett and his tie to Count Dooku. So they should already be thinking that something's amiss. So I don't know.
Random army ready to serve us at the right time.
And I know from that point on, they kind of knew that, all right, something's going on here. We don't know what, but we're just going to, but we're so far deep at this point that we just got to keep pushing through. And that's what they say.
That really is what Yoda says.
Yeah, that's what. So, well, we're stuck. Whatever happens. If we die, we die. Like So, yeah, I think. Yeah, it would have been interesting.
What was my answer for that?
Yeah, like what would you like?
So, yeah, I agree. I think Palpatine's going to go, oh no, like word's getting around. They're trying to foil my plan. I'm going to go ahead and say Order 66. Let's go ahead and do it. Way more messy. But I think by the time, hopefully, covertly, Jedi can get the message that this is going to happen or this is a possibility. There's going to be more Jedi survivor. I mean, really, I was heavily going toward your answer that I think there's going to be a lot more Jedi survivors. I think there's going to be like maybe I'm reading all these comics that are happening in the original trilogy. Like the Jedi are like completely a thing of the past. They're like ancient even at that time. So I think that like, even in 10 BBY or something like that, like Obi-Wan doesn't have to hide. I think he even like people get to like be Jedi and they're not like political enemies of the public. I think they can be like just an opposing faction and like have their own kind of like carved out
Inquisitors
system.
might not even be a thing at that point because I don't know.
Maybe a few less of them. Yeah.
It would be really interesting because you might end up with just this like almost tri-warfare going on with the Jedi banding together, possibly getting like a people's movement behind them. You'd have clone armies, the separatists are still around, and that's a really good one. Manslayer says, what if Obi-Wan would have not saved Dooku from dying in the Pirates arc in season 1 where Hondo's introduced? What if Obi-Wan just walked in there and just like sliced off Dooku's head or something? Just kills him. Like, oh my goodness. I just wish we would have gotten more in the movies because we got some in Clone Wars. I just wish we had gotten more of Christopher Lee and Ewan McGregor talking to each other, like
Yeah.
more between the two of them. That's like my favorite part, maybe, of Attack of the Clones is them talking about
What if I
Qui-Gon
told
and
you?
what's going on. And
Yeah.
I just wish we got a little bit more of Christopher Lee. So I have original trilogy ones, but Rebels and Andor take place before those. So Luke, which one you got first for me? I'm assuming it'd be Rebels.
I've
Or
got some Rebels ones. There's some bad
what's your
ones, but
best Rebels one?
well, it's really near and dear to my heart, but I don't know if you guys are going to think this is very hard hitting, but in the grand scheme of all Star Wars, but what if Kanan had lived? He's my favorite character. I'm thinking maybe if Kanan lives, Ezra doesn't have to fly away. He can maybe come up with a different way to save Ezra and redirect the confrontation that happens with Thrawn at the very end of the show. I'm thinking maybe that can play out differently if Kanan is there to be maybe a little bit more of a voice of reason to help redirect Ezra's energy.
Right. I feel good about this one, so I'll jump in here. Outside of Darth Vader dying to save Luke in Return of the Jedi, Kanan's death is, I believe, like the most necessary, like makes sense. You could see it coming a mile away death in Star Wars. Like from the first episode of Rebels, like you knew this guy's gonna sacrifice himself for this like kid or this group at some point, like being the Jedi. That does not make the sacrifice where he gets to see Hera one more time and he stops the flames, does not stop that from hitting hard at all. Just because you know that's going to happen and at some point does not mean that it's any less compelling or any less, emotional. However, like he needs to die. Like he needs to die. And I hate saying that because I freaking love Kanan Jarrus. I love Kanan, and I know you like that's one of your favorite characters in Star Wars
of all time. Yeah.
So what is he, like number 2 all time for you, or 2 or 3?
It
Right behind
on the day. Top 2 and 3.
So, but I think this one is he really needs to die, just because it makes so much sense for the story. It makes so much sense for like the whole arc of the character, what he goes through, and yeah. So I wouldn't change this one. But if he had lived, it would have been really interesting to see what happens with him and Ezra. I think Ezra still does what he does. Like honestly, I still
Does
think
Kanan go with him?
No, I think that Kanan, it would be an interesting thing in Ahsoka because we'd have an older version of Kanan at that point. But I think we would be left with a Kanan who has so much maybe like bitterness and regret over Ezra not telling him or not being able to do it for Ezra, but also immense pride in what Ezra did. But like, it would be really interesting to see Kanan have to live with that. Seeing it's in a sense, it's like a parent having to see the death of their own child, and no parent should ever have to experience that. And that would essentially be what Kanan would be doing with Ezra. So it would be really compelling to see that play out on screen, but I don't think it would change anything that Ezra does.
Okay.
What about you, Nate?
Yeah. Well, for starters, if Kanan survived, Rebels wouldn't be my favorite Star Wars show anymore. So there's that. But
because you hate Kanan and you loved seeing him die.
I love Kanan. He's probably favorite.
I'm kidding.
He's probably my favorite new canon character besides like Dr. Aphra or something like that. I'd have to debate between those two all the time. But I would be curious to see, because if Kanan survived, I think either one, he would take the place of Ezra and go off to the other galaxy, or 2, which I think is more likely, Ezra would still do his thing, and that he would go on to take part in the rebellion. And what would that look like when Luke comes into the picture? I think that could be interesting to play with, because suddenly you have 2 Jedi and 2 Sith. I mean, what if we get that big old battle.
Does he even want to train Luke after what just happened with Ezra? Like maybe
that's
he's
true.
super closed off.
Yeah,
and that makes Luke's
that could be
arc
interesting.
then in the sequel trilogy like interesting because he's kind of repeating Kanan's stuff
Yeah.
now to Rey.
Yeah.
Like that's
what would Kanan's relationship be like with Ahsoka? That's what I would be interested in because Ahsoka
Yeah.
experienced like she left her master. She knows what her master became. Kanan now feels like he failed a pupil. And so it's like she feels it's just this
I
interesting
think
how
they could
they
heal
might
each other
have
pretty well.
like a really interesting dynamic between the two of them. So here's what I'm going to make an executive decision here.
Okay.
45 minutes. We're going to turn this. This has been fun. We'll do like this is like part one.
We can just do the trilogies and we're
Like,
good.
this is
I
just-
don't have to have any more.
No. This is
No,
fun.
we have
This is like we're just gonna do.
We have a ton in chat that we have to.
Yeah, it's like we have a ton in the chats. We're just gonna do like part one. This is all pre-Death Star. Well, this will be like this episode will be all pre-Death Star being blown up, like things. And then like next week we'll like we could do like some unless we have some big time news to talk about, who knows like what could happen in Star Wars in a week. But we could do like part two of more like original trilogy era type things, and I can come up with we can get some good ones for that. But let's catch up because there's some good ones. This one here from Manslayer was good. I think the biggest what if is what if Yaddle sent a WhatsApp to the Jedi Council before facing a potential threat with Dooku at the works in Coruscant? At least a voice message, Yaddle.
If only.
That's if only Yaddle. Like is it maybe it's just a little thing the Green Goblins have. They just think they can take on, everyone themselves. Like Yoda's like, I'm going in alone. Like, don't you ever wonder, like, couldn't like Yoda, Obi-Wan be like, let's go tag team this? We have them separated. Like, what if we took them on together? Sort of thing. Like, Obi-Wan, shouldn't you know this? Like, remember when Anakin tried to he took Dooku on by himself?
This time we'll do it together.
What if Mace Windu took Anakin to face Palpatine after telling him that he had earned his respect? Now, that's something I would love to see, like in terms of like an animated, if they ever did like a what if animation, something like that would be fun. Luke, I'm throw this one to you first.
Gosh, I have to think this
is a good
plays
one,
out
Travis.
Completely differently. It stinks every time I watch Revenge of the Sith and he cuts off Mace's arm. I'm like, don't do that. If Mace could have,
that's another moment where you watch it and there's like,
maybe Disney Plus, maybe they released a special edition and it won't happen this time. Shoot,
yeah, exactly.
Like, so I have to think that if Mace is very upfront with like, listen, if what you've told me is true, like you've earned my respect, I want you to come with me. Like, let's do this. If you really like prove to me that you've changed your heart, I think that breaks through with Anakin. They've not had a good relationship, him and Mace, and so I think if this can like be the first step in like, I'm sorry for treating you this way, Anakin.
Right.
I'm gonna help me out. Help me help you. Like, let's do this. So I think that maybe they take down Palpatine and they can end the Empire before it starts.
Nate, do you think that would happen?
I think the scene would play a lot better if Anakin was there from the start. I get why they had to do like the whole Jedi Council going with Mace to take him down. I get it. But I think if Anakin was there from the start and it still play out generally the same way, I think that would have been a much better scene. It would have been a lot more interesting to watch. Yeah, like I still think the same result happens, but I think from a character perspective, it would have been more interesting and make Mace's final moments a little bit more impactful and add a little bit more oomph to that relationship that wasn't touched on enough between Mace and Anakin. I think that would have been really cool.
It's interesting how what we see from Mace is all about like this animosity a little bit towards Anakin too. But if we remember in like Clone Wars, he's the one telling like Obi-Wan, if the prophecy is true, like your apprentice is the only one that can bring balance to the Force. And then there's the deleted scene with him and Obi-Wan before Obi-Wan leaves. He's like, you have to trust in, his training. You have to trust him. Like
it's the first moment of vulnerability for the character, and a character that didn't have any. So
yeah.
And we got so little of that from
Mhm.
that moment because he died 5 minutes later. So it would have been
Mhm.
interesting to keep tugging on that string a little bit.
I think it still plays out the same.
Yeah,
Ultimately, like, I
I
think
do
that it
too.
still plays out the same because I think that, it would have been different. Now, having if I think it would be really interesting if like if Yoda wasn't on Kashyyyk and Yoda was in that conversation, like and Yoda was there, or if Anakin still had an Ahsoka around him, or if
Mhm.
Obi-Wan wasn't there. Like those are the only people that I can imagine that could have changed the outcome of that moment that had to be there, like right then and there. But ultimately, I think yeah, the arm is still getting severed. He's getting blasted out the window to Palpatine finally having his unlimited power moment. But that's a really good one. Like I think that also that fight scene would just probably feel a lot more like awesome if there weren't just
It'd be a
three
lot
just guys
better
getting
if
nuked immediately
I'd have
at the
to
beginning.
disagree because I'm the world's #1 Aegon Kolar fan.
Aegon Kolar is what he literally watched Palpatine do his little spinning twirl and just
just
like stunned, like probably because he's been like,
go
I've
put
had
him
to
in the
rescue.
Order 66 montage and just be done with
Yeah,
it.
it's probably they were so shocked. They were so shocked because they've been dragging this old guy around for 7 seasons of Clone Wars. Like, how many times did Palpatine get captured or in a near death situation? He's like, oh dear, like he's just running around. They're like, this guy's
Help me.
helpless, and now he's like, it be literally like when you're oh man, it's like in Everything Everywhere All at Once when Jamie Lee Curtis's character who's just been sitting behind that desk the whole time, then she's all of a sudden like the sumo wrestler, like just taking people out. Like be like watching your teacher, like like an older teacher who's just been sitting behind the desk, suddenly just get out. You probably get startled too, Jedi powers or not. It might take you a little bit by the surprise. I don't know.
Absolutely.
We have it's 52 minutes. We'll jump into a new era of Star Wars what ifs at another point in time. Maybe like next week if we have another soft news week, we can go back into it. It's fun to talk about these for like do a little mini series on them. But Luke, I want to know what are some of your funny wait, no, we have Andor still because we could do pre-Death Star. We could do Andor season 1. Let's do Andor season 1 and then we'll wrap it up.
So I don't have the stuff for Andor season 1. I was gonna wait on that as
Oh,
well.
never mind. Never mind.
Yeah, we're good.
We'll do that next week. We'll give you time to
Yeah.
prepare. For Andor season 1. Let's what's a couple funny you said you had a couple funny Rebels or Clone Wars
There are a
ones. Like in
couple
Rebels, like what if Ezra had
Reasons.
actually just joined as Morrigan or Hondo? What if Ezra had actually joined Hondo and his little pirate gang instead of going back to their ghost crew?
So this one like sucks to think about, but I did have like, what if Ezra joined Palpatine on Thrawn's Chimera? He's showing him like his parents, and it's like, what would I didn't know if that was a deep one we could go on, but like he's really tempted on that moment, but he makes the right decision not to join him. But like you'd almost have like a Ezra versus Luke at some point in the future, which would be interesting.
I think less about Ezra joining Palpatine in that scenario and more about like Palpatine having access to the world between worlds
that's more what it's about.
and being able to do that. Like as great as Ezra is, like
what could that look like? Palpatine having the world between worlds. What if he actually succeeded in that? I mean, he
like,
could rewrite all of history. Although I don't know why he would want to, because he already has the galaxy on his shoulders. Would he want to ensure
it's like, what else
that?
is he trying to do?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, could it be he wants to go see more of like Darth Plagueis and some of the things that his master was doing. Maybe he didn't learn everything like he thought he did because Project Necromancer isn't working out very well. He you know, at this point in time, it could be like we need to figure out what went wrong with Project Necromancer. Like what did I get wrong there? And like with the world between worlds, and tell me if I'm wrong, he can like also go forward and see
I was gonna say,
what happens to him. Like,
Ezra is hearing Rey and Kylo.
Yes,
in the
so
world between worlds.
he would be able to be like, oh, this is what like I need to take the steps in order to prevent this now. Like there's all of these little things he could do to try to make sure that his reign truly is like eternal. And that's, I think, like the scariest part is like you're dealing with someone who would then who is clearly has no shred of morals in him, having the ability to make sure his complete utter reign is extended beyond. I also think that he's probably aware that there are other Jedi that have escaped him. Finding out who those are, where they are, is very important to him as well. I mean, that's why the Inquisitors are so prominent still, at this point in time.
Exactly. The other one I have is, I mean, this one also is like gut punch, but like, what if Maul confronts Obi-Wan on Tatooine and Rebels, and Maul wins the duel and kills Obi-Wan? It's like not even a possibility in your head when you're watching that on screen, but like, what if you flip it? Like, no Obi-Wan for original trilogy? What happens there?
So I think the most interesting thing is not like necessarily, oh, I'm going to jump to the original trilogy. It's what is Maul's next move? Because Maul at that point has figured out that Obi-Wan is there for a reason. Like he's there to protect someone. So as Maul's next move, I'm going to find who that is that you're protecting. That's so important because Maul's already thinking chosen one, like prophecy at that point in time. And so at that point, does Maul separate Luke from Owen and Beru? Does he? I would assume at some point he's going to figure out who Luke is. Like he's going to be able to figure that out, and he's going to pursue him. And does Maul end up forcing Luke to be like his apprentice, or staging it in a way where Luke feels like Maul is like a savior coming in to protect him in some way,
like he did with Ezra?
Yeah. And I wonder if he uses that same tact on Luke, but it works because unlike Ezra,
he's much younger.
Yeah, he's much younger. Probably, let's be honest, Luke's pretty gullible guy. Like it's a pretty gullible guy at the beginning, like, for sure.
I will teach you how to bullseye womp rats with your T16.
and so I really believe that like that could have been more of a Luke would have been off with Maul, and who knows what that would have led to.
Crimson Dawn 2.
Crimson Dawn 2 with this boy. He's like, how does he go? He's like, Kenobi. He's like, we just has this whole like, I'm gonna rebuild. And like too, when he hears that last name, he
exactly
knows of Anakin because he was trying to lure Anakin to Mandalore in the season 7 arc. Is he gonna be able to like start piecing some of this puzzle together? And how long before? Like, I just think there at some point, Maul would be unable to keep a low profile, especially with the Inquisitors after him. It would have led to a much sooner confrontation between Vader and Maul and Luke. And we could have seen possibly like Luke being thrust in front of his father and the Emperor when he's, 9, 10, 11 years old.
Yeah, exactly. And then my last real stupid one is I was just trying to pull like the most glup shitto characters, and I was like, what if Melch and Ketsu Onyo kill Thrawn? What if that?
It's like, you have to remind me of who that is. Melch and Ketsu Ono?
Melch is the little
pig
character
guy
that helps.
That?
Yeah, he's
What?
the Ugnaught. He's the
How
Ugnaught
would they
that
even
helps.
come in the same room together, much less?
Ketsu Onyo is Sabine's like friend.
Gotcha. Yep.
Who's also
Melch?
They just
armored
killed
up.
Raw. Like they were technically they're all there on Lothal at the end. So maybe somehow
I guess
we go back and Melch, like of all people.
Melch.
Like what? How many times did Hondo like leave that guy to die, and then
multiple?
I mean, the way to beat Thrawn is by throwing the most. Is by throwing the one thing he can't predict at him, and by all means, Melch fits that role. So,
Ugnaught for the win.
But then again, he's so closely tied with Hondo, the most predictable like character in Star Wars. One of my favorite moments in all of Star Wars is Hondo and Rebels when he like sends the Imperials after the Ghost Crew and then calls Ezra and he's like, "Hey, the Imperials, they're on their way." He's like, "Oh, thanks for the heads up, Hondo." And Kanan's like, "How do you think he knows?" And you just hear Hondo on the intercom, "Another great save from Hondo Onaka."
My other little spicy one for the Acolyte was like, what if we got a backstory for Chimera and Vernestra?
What if indeed?
So
Oh my gosh! Like, oh my goodness! Give me one more Clone Wars, and then we'll get out of here. I want one more Clone
more
Wars.
Clone Wars. Did I have anything else?
I mean, nothing
didn't-
beats the Lerman.
The Lerman were good, but
Ooh, I got one. I got one.
yeah, hit me with it
What
because I
if?
didn't have
What
anything
if?
else written down.
What if Stila Guerrera lives?
Shoot,
Stila
does
lives.
Saul become?
Saul is never, separated from his sister. She survives the Clone Wars. They go into like a more of a rebellion, together. And you have like Saul's ability to, doing anything that he feels needs to be done, coupled with Steela's, more of a like maybe a natural like leader to inspire people. What could that have done, and how much could that have benefited the rebellion having both Guerreras locked in?
I think hugely. I also had another one that I think closely ties in. But what if Mina Bonteri had lived? That she because her and Padme were going to kind of like unite the Separatists and the Republic. At least large swaths of them were going to come together.
That would have been a good one. That would have been a good one. So many good ones. So next week we'll start off with Andor. Assuming we don't have big news, we'll do like part 2, and we'll have like Andor. We'll do some Andor ones. What if Cassian had died? No, what if
he went to Narkina 6?
What if there was indeed more than one way out? There was actually a second way out.
More than 13.
Okay.
Well, there clearly is, because what's his face is coming back in season 2. So
It was
Kino Loy.
the second way out was actually pretend to not swim in order to move up in the ranks somehow.
what if Kino Loy could swim?
What if Kino? That's going to be the first topic of discussion next week. Is what if Kino Loy could swim? So next week we'll hit Andor. We'll hit the original trilogy as well.
Mandoverse.
We'll have that'll be, I guess, that's pre-sequels. So we'll do Mandoverse, or do we want to just save Mandoverse, tie it into like sequel stuff, since we don't really have any, there's no sequels shows really.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Like we just focus on we'll figure it out. It's not that big a deal. So, Luke, Nate, thank you for hopping in this evening. We had a good time. That was fun talking some Star Wars what ifs. I will say this: the timeline show this Saturday may be out on Sunday or late Saturday night. We will have to figure out what that looks like, as the schedule is a little crazy this week, and our recording for that might take place a little later. But we only have 2 episodes left of Young Jedi Adventures for the timeline show. So we have been cranking through Young Jedi Adventures. So make sure you check out the timeline show on Saturday night. Maybe it comes out on Sunday. For the Monday pod, we have a few things I'm cooking. I have an idea of our skeleton crew for us to talk about, Luke. So I'll talk to you about that here in a little bit. But Nate, anything you'd like to share and throw out there before we sign off here?
Nothing crazy. On the site now, if you've been missing Clone Force 99, The Bad Batch, go to Star Wars Newsnet right now. Read about the upcoming comic that we announced this morning. It looks like it's going to be really fun. Tomorrow on the site, expect my review of that random out of nowhere audiobook, Padawan's Pride. You probably got my general thoughts at the beginning of the stream, but I might go into more detail later in that article. Next week, Tears of the Nameless hits bookshelves. I know all 3 of us are very looking forward to that book.
Oh, yes.
So I will be diving into that as soon as I get my hands on it and reviewing that for the site. So keep an eye out for that.
Check us out on Apple and Spotify at Star Wars Newsnet. Give us a follow there. Like and subscribe to the channel. Get ready for some High Republic book talk here before long. For Light and Life, everyone, remember that we are all the Republic.